Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser, brought to you by Reckless Coffee. Go ahead and check them out on Reckless Coffee Brewing. Get yourself a cup of Joe and join the gang over here as we talk about all the headlines and all the good stuff. So, first off, we have the Gravenberg dude, John, in the house. What's happening?
I'm good. How are you, everyone? Still halfway through the international break, so hopefully we'll get there. We're getting there, guys.
Halfway through, we're done, man. It's
Oh,
done.
we're
It's over.
done. Oh,
Well,
geez, like
I think so. I don't know if there's anything.
I am out of sorts, so like I just can't
I
wait for it.
consider us done. I forgot, by the way, it is Wednesday, so I have. When I saw Gordo, when I saw number two, I was like, "Oh, that's right, I'm number one." So the number one dad Wednesday is in the house, and number two is there.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what? That's what I like. What's
I
going
wrote
on,
it on my
Gordo?
own card. Oh, not much. Just trying to give myself an ego boost, a personal ego boost.
There you go. It says, I'm just Taylor Swift watching my boy Gordo. Then we will have to constantly cut to Ryan anytime Gordo says something, we will have to cut to Ryan to see his reaction, what he's saying, what he's doing, and stuff like that. Alan is with us. Sparky is traveling the world again. Where eventually he's going to be back in Phoenix, I think. But afternoon, he must be back home, I assume. So a lot to get to, actually, especially for like an international week. So let's start with the international stuff first. Obviously, there's a Robertson injury. Sounds a lot worse than, well, I don't know. Like, I guess we all feared for the worst initially. Then it sounded like it was not going to be as bad, John. But now they're talking like they might be surgery and stuff like that. So we're going to get like an excessive dosage. And as far as I'm concerned, any dosage is kind of excessive at this stage, at least, is Costas, who's having a good international break, mind you. But what is your confidence level?
Shaky, but at best hopeful, right? But in truth, shaky. Hey, like Henderson hasn't taken out all the hope yet, mind you. But but yeah, Costas hasn't had the best start, so yeah, we're rightfully nervous. I'm as nervous as we were putting Joey G in right back, and rightfully so. So obviously, as Liverpool fans, we hope that he'll step up to the plate, rediscover the form that he found when Robertson was injured at the start of 2 seasons ago, where he was in the conversation of maybe taking Robertson's place. Like, we wouldn't mind that. At the end of all this, we wouldn't mind having a good discussion whether Robertson should get back his place. That is the ideal scenario. But right now, I think being worried is the right emotion to feel, honestly.
Yeah, I am beyond worried. I think based mostly on recent performances more than the past performances, like you're saying. And I mean, how much stock do you put? Because I know this is where it's going to go, so I might as well get it out of the way over here, Gordo. A run of games is all Gordo needs, is what I keep getting told. Do you think a run of games is going to do the trick?
I don't know. I think we've seen him have a run of games, right? Like he had a pretty good slot in the team for a number of games. I don't think he's a terrible replacement, right? I think it's somebody that we could rely on. It's probably not the first person you'd want to put in there, but it's not like the end of the world. It's not like having to put Milner back there or something where you're like, he'll give us 90 minutes, but he'll also scare the crap out of us back there. So.
I mean, here's the thing, and I think okay, so let me guys ask you this. I personally would rather have Milner right now as left back. Just because I know John Milner knows his limitations, and while he's not going to have the speed and stuff like that, he plays accordingly, right? I feel like sometimes and this is the only way I think the run of games helps, right? Knowing you're going to play again. You don't have to look over your shoulder because there's nobody to replace you. So you can kind of like feel freely and not stress and not have to show your worth every time you touch the ball. But if I gave you the option, for example, right now, and I said, like, bring Miller back at left back and Costas, who are you going with?
We talking prime Milner or Milner right now?
We're talking Milner. There is nothing different than prime Milner. Milner is always prime.
Well, yeah, I'd probably have. It's actually dependent on the opposition. Like if we're playing against a team that's probably sitting back, I like Costas's delivery from set pieces more. if that makes sense. But if we're talking about a game where we will be placed on the back foot, like let's say against an Arsenal or a City, I'd be much more confident, with Milner in a one-on-one against a speedy winger or a strong player against, let's say, a Costas who can easily get blown past or shrugged off. But, either way, I'm sure Van Dijk is going to miss his running mate Robertson, although I do agree with what you said a few shows ago, though, where he would just absolutely tell Costas to stay back. So in a way, he can like rein him in more. So maybe, just maybe, we might be a bit more secure defensively. That's the hope, right?
Yes. I mean, I guess in some ways. I mean, Ryan says, and I do agree with this. Of all the people to get hurt right now, it may be Robo. Love him, but he's been lost. While I agree he hasn't been his best, Gordo, are we going to find out in a bad way that he wasn't actually that bad?
Yeah, and I forget, was it you or was it John last week? We were kind of talking about this a little bit, and it was just the fact that maybe Robertson's always been like this, or like Trent's always been like this. It was just that we had that one brilliant Virgil van Dijk season that kind of papered over the cracks, and we didn't notice that these were how these players play, and so we still value them going forward. I think that's the biggest loss, right? Is the effectiveness of the passing from those two guys on either of the wings, and you shut that avenue of supply down to the top guys, and we might have to change the system, especially if somebody's going to hide defensively back there for us, and they're not going to make those pressing runs, and they're not going to force the defense to either choose to step onto Robertson or watch a pass, which is that's really what those two guys do the most, is create space by either dragging a defender into them and they can pass into the open space that's just been created, or if the defender stays off, then they can go all the way to the byline and make a cross in, a dangerous cross, coming back away from goal. So I think we'll see that we'll miss some pieces of them, but we might be more stable defensively, which would be nice, because if you get Virgil van Dijk a couple of good games, couple of clean sheets, then the back line gains confidence too. So fingers crossed that it works out.
You guys are both saying, am I hearing this right, that you guys are both saying defensively Costas would be better?
Maybe because Virgil kind of tells him to stay back, though. Right, because the reason why Robbo gets caught out of position a lot is because either he's tracking back, right, or he's catching up from moving forward too much, if that makes sense. Like, Costas will move forward, but I believe it was you who made this point, Tim. Like, considering it's not the first choice back line, we might be a bit more cautious, might. As cautious as a club team can be.
Me, damn it, both of you guys. There's a reason we delete old footage. But yeah, I think so. I understand that part of it. I mean, Robertson's thing has always been messing up the back line, like always a step behind the center back, which I'm sure Van Dijk loved having, and maybe he won't miss that. I just feel like normally, I think that's the only reason I feel like Robertson has not been the same Robertson compared to the years in the past, because even 1v1, people have got him past him, which is something we didn't see before. He always did that thing where he was 2 steps behind Van Dijk, and this year it felt like it was even more, because it was worried about being beaten over the top. It all goes back to me not liking this inverted fullback thing, because I think, what Gordo was talking about earlier, getting that passing from the wings, we've kind of like totally lost it, because on one wing we have Matip, the other wing we don't have anybody, because we're inverted, everybody's kind of shifted over, and Robertson was tucked in, I thought, like too much as well, or having to stay back because of the new system. So let's see what changes with that. I don't think anything changes system wise, but let's see if the run of games thing changes things. So it's not all bad news, I guess, in terms of international. A lot of good performances. Gordo, does any of these international performances, when a guy goes out there, gets clean sheets, Van Dijk scores the last second penalty after Weghorst botches the one earlier in the game. I don't know, like Nunez had a good game yesterday. Do those translate at all, or is that just like a different chapter? It doesn't matter at all.
I think it definitely translates, right? Because like England, for instance, they got their first, well, what was it, last year or the year before? They beat Italy It was last year. They beat Italy like on Italy's home soil for the first time in like forever, and then they rubber stamped it by coming from behind. Now Italy's not where they were. They are the reigning Euro champions right now, but still that's a rough one to take for them. So that those kind of results definitely boost players. And for instance, like the Uruguay or the Brazil game, Nunes is going to take that and he's going to run with that, because that was like the first time that Brazil's won a qualifier in like since 2015 or something like that. So that's a big result. That's not just it was a pretty massive loss for them. And so with Nunes being part of that, the media at home is exciting. That's an exciting place to be, and to know that you were one of the linchpins in doing something like that, that's going to definitely give them confidence. So hopefully it translates.
Let me play devil's advocate then. Does it bring confidence, you think? Like Nunez looks at that, John, and says, yeah, now I'm going to keep going? Or does it bring in some ways more frustration, where he's like, man, how come I can't do this shit over there?
It could be, but Nunez is a very confidence-driven player, as we showed. He didn't end like the past stretch of games really well, so I think anything for him at this point is good. Anything that's good for him at this point is really good. So I was scrolling on Twitter before the show, and I already got folks hyping him up like, oh, Everton should be scared, and here we go, he'll drop another stinker like he did at Brighton. But honestly, I'm hopeful for him, because with Nunez, man, like I stand by with him being my first choice still for the front three, and I feel like he'll continue to pick it up as the season goes on. So hopefully that's the case after this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? Because they did all pretty much have like a good outing in the international duty. I don't think Mo did a whole lot. I didn't look at the score. I didn't at least see headlines of him scoring and stuff like that. But I think in those games, it's hard to be Mo, because like everybody, like there's 4 guys just watching Mo and saying like, you guys do what you got to do. But let's continue with this international stuff over here. So Ireland is in a situation where they have to lose to Netherlands to actually have a chance to qualify for the Euro. For this, we're going to our international fixtures correspondent, Gordo, to explain it to the crowd of how the hell that happens. Go ahead.
This is where I find out that I don't really know when I like say it out loud, because I feel like I understand it, but when I try and explain to other people, then it's going to be very obvious that I don't really know what's going on. So by the rules, because of the Nations League from last year, it rewards the highest team that hasn't qualified for Europe, or the highest ranked team that hasn't qualified for Europe, which currently is Ireland. Or it could be Estonia who won Group D. But in order for Ireland to get it, they have to be the 8th best team that hasn't qualified yet. So with the Dutch not having qualified yet, and Greece just behind Ireland, if Ireland beats the Netherlands, then the Netherlands becomes the 8th team, and Greece would get that qualifying spot. And so the Netherlands would go into the playoffs, and Ireland would miss out on it by being the 9th team. So it is in their best interest to lose to the Dutch, so that the Dutch automatically qualify, and Ireland gets. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. This is where we cut to Taylor, and she's like, "Oh."
So it doesn't make any sense, but that is the rules. They have to be team number 8, and if they beat the Dutch, then they won't qualify.
Okay, John, what the hell did Gordo just say? Repeat what he just said.
So from what I took there, they have to lose to win. Right?
Well, and they don't even win because they go into the playoffs, right?
Right.
So like all they do is they get a chance at going to the playoff. It's like finishing 3rd in the Champions League group stages and getting to go to Europa League. Yeah. And then going to the knockouts and getting knocked out in the first round, and then just having your tournament ended. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I saw that and I was like, what the hell? And I was telling you guys before, usually, like, when Turkey is involved in these things, there's like 85 different things that has to happen for Turkey to qualify. This has been a rare occasion where they're just like winning the group and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of used to these scenarios, but never been in a scenario where Turkey had to lose to have a chance to qualify. That's the first. So I thought that was like kind of like weird when I saw the headline. I'm like, oh, okay. So let's talk about this because this is kind of like the bigger news right now. I don't know if Tonali is betting that Ireland qualifies for the Euros. John, so this news came out. Obviously, one player, God, what was the guy's name? Starts with an F. Somebody fill in. The first player that admitted he's already been 8 months or something like that, I think is what he got.
Wasn't it Tony?
Oh, Ivan Tony in England?
No. The Italian kid, Fagiolo, is that what his name is?
Oh, Zanilio.
He is still under investigation. Supposedly, he did not do anything yet, or like has not been proven yet. I think basically what's happening is they pulled these guys aside and they said, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're kind of like doing this now. Tonali admitted, and from what I understand, Tonali's ban could be worse compared to, I'll find that guy's name now, but because he bet on Milan games as well, which goes into, I guess, a different crime because obviously you can impact it more as opposed to you betting on like another football game. So apparently Tonali is addicted to gambling, and this is why this is happening. John.
I don't know. Like it's just so weird because we were talking about before the show started. If you're addicted to it, like why can't you just gamble on something else? Like didn't it cross your mind that if you are to get caught, like look at Ivan Tony's ban. It's an entire season's worth. That's 1 year of his career that he's never going to be getting back. We don't know the extent of this guy and his ban, right?
Fagioli got 7 months, and that was basically betting. The word is Tonali will be worse,
right?
Because it is involving him betting on his own.
And that's 2 clubs as well, right? Was it just Milan or both Milan and Newcastle?
I think it's in Milan. Like when this is like, because I think this was happening last year, but you got to figure if he's addicted, he probably continued.
Right.
More might be coming out. I think basically these guys are trying to get a plea deal by cooperating, which only means obviously there's going to be a lot more players coming in because they're talking about, about 40 players involved in this. I mean, some of them could be the dude sitting at the end of the bench that we never heard of, but I'm sure, based on the team and like teams involved, there will be a lot of players who we know. Yeah, but are you buying the gambling addiction as an excuse? Because it is a real thing. I'm not undermining the gambling addiction thing, but can't you channel that somewhere else?
Well, I definitely think it's a real thing because, like I told you a few weeks ago, when I bet on Nunez on that Europa League game, I won, and I had 5 free bets, right? Because I was a new member, and I immediately used them all and lost. So I can see the appeal, right? I can see the appeal for people in terms of you win one and you just want to keep going and test out your luck. My luck isn't good. My friend can attest to that. So right. So I totally get it. But is it an excuse? Absolutely not. Again, you could always bet on Formula One. You can bet on UFC. Why do you have to bet on something where you have direct control of? Doesn't make any sense. So whatever punishment he's going to get, I don't know. It's kind of hard to argue that it isn't justified. Wouldn't you guys say? Right.
I think that's where I'm at with it, Gordo. I understand that. And any kind of addiction that you got to have obviously sympathy for, and because it is a real deal and it can get bad and stuff. But at the same time, why would you do something? You can still bet and stay within the rules, but like Sparky says, and I agree on that, you would gamble on the subject, so he bets on football, which, if that's the case, let's not go into that. But because my record does not show much in terms of betting. Do you buy that, Gordo? Obviously, that explanation makes sense, like Sparky's explanation, that you're going to kind of go towards something but then he took another step and bets on the game he's involved in.
Yeah, that's I think where you cross the line. It's such a convoluted subject anyways already in the sport, because when Tony went down in England, they did that. It was what, 9 teams out of the 20 have betting sponsors on the front of their kits, and it's just like the whole thing is wrapped around betting. I mean, every commercial there's some like 1 or 2 different betting scenarios in there. All the billboards around the stadium have betting come up, and it's like, oh yeah, but you can't do that. So I think it's a touchy subject. I also don't have addiction, so it's like hard for me, like I can't, it's one of those things where it's tough to tell someone like you shouldn't do that, because I don't have it. I don't know that constraint. But yeah, I mean, do it the legal way. I mean, look at Trent Alexander-Arnold right now is going in with an investment with Juan Mata and a couple other people to basically buy into F1. It's not really betting, but technically you're putting money in something that's supposed to kick back money if it succeeds. So buy a football club, buy a lower league football club. It's the most legal form of gambling that he could possibly do. It's like you put all your money in, and if they're good, you get a return investment that's bigger. I'm sure it's not as sexy as going and putting $100 million down on a game that you're playing in, but it's still, if he wants to go that avenue, that's a more positive way to go. But again, I don't have the addiction, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we over here do not take sponsors from betting, because we don't endorse it. Aside from John over here, who's
I stopped.
I know that feeling.
Who's addict in progress over here. But our sponsor is Reckless Coffee, because it's the morning coffee show. So Reckless Coffee Roasters, by the way, go check them out before I forget to mention it again. The website is right there ticking along the way.
If you're gonna gamble, spend some money on some good coffee beans.
You gotta keep yourself
you're
away.
bound to win. Yes.
Right.
We're supporting gambling in a roundabout way by
right.
Another addiction, caffeine.
Right. Exactly.
As I'm like, I don't have an addiction, as I'm just chugging a coffee.
Yeah.
No addictions here.
Yeah, that's an odd thing, right? I mean, it's not, because I know personally that I am probably semi-addicted to coffee in some ways, but it's more psychological. Like I could, like at this point, unless it's ridiculously strong, and even then, like I can drink Turkish coffee and then just go to bed. Like I'd be fine. Whereas, I mean, if you're not used to coffee, if you have Turkish coffee, you're probably up at least like 8 hours. So I would not recommend doing it in the evening or whatever. But I mean, even if I can drink something, it's more psychological for me if I don't have it, which is part of, I think, the description of addiction right there, Goro. That if I don't have it, I feel like.
Don't you think that's what Tonali would say too? Like, well, it's all mental. I'm not really addicted to it. But the first reports that came out, I know we were talking to it before we started recording, but the initial reports that came out, the translation said he had a gambling addiction, which I thought was and it made like it also said, it went down and said it a couple more times. So like they literally thought that the word meant addition, and someone like who didn't. It was a press release too, so like who didn't verify that? Like read it back. Someone's just like typing what they hear without thinking about what they're putting down.
I almost feel like somewhere in that article it was meant to be addiction, and it changed it in the entire article from addiction to addiction. So it's scattered everywhere. They're like, no, not correct, all of them. So she says, how is it any different from congressmen taking money from stocks and pharmaceutical and arms companies? And yeah, it is not, to be honest. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of that either. But that's why our system is fucked up.
That's a very, very deep rabbit hole we're gonna go down there.
Yeah, but that's why this is
another podcast.
They should not be able to. But that's why decisions are made in terms of their pockets as opposed to the good of humanity or people in general, kind of a thing. But okay, so is it just to not basically create that gray area? Like going back to Cersei's example, it might not affect that congressman's decision at all, but it can. So we rather not have it at all. So there is no question. Because I mean, Tonali playing for Milan and saying like, you know what? I kind of like Fenerbahce in this game against Galatasaray. Let me roll like freaking $1,000 or whatever he's betting over there. It doesn't really affect anything. But then I think probably, John, my guess is it creates some gray area, because before you know it, He's going to bet on Fenerbahce playing an Italian team in the European Cup, and then he's going to bet on something else. It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I think for this, like, gray areas, like you said, kind of add a bit too much complications. It's probably best to just do absolutes. Just no, right?
Yeah.
Simple no.
Yeah.
And I stand by that. And honestly, it's a very Sir Z kind of touched up on it, like with politicians and stuff. I think with athletes as well, it's a very like deep rabbit hole we're gonna go down to. So in order to make things simple, just no. Right, and it should apply to other things as well, like politics. But again, that's as Gordo said, it's a conversation for another podcast, right? So that's a long podcast, by the way, like 2 hours minimum. Jesus.
Okay, so let's talk about this though. Okay, so Football Flashback says, did you guys like Tony bet on himself, which isn't so bad. But is it not so bad? Like, I don't know what he was betting on specifically, and we don't know what Tonali's betting on.
Yeah, if he bets on himself getting a yellow card, well, like...
I have faith in myself to get a yellow card in this game. I mean, even if it is him scoring, or even if it is, I mean, I guess if you're, betting on himself scoring, to me, affects the game, because you're going to take a shot when you should be passing Gordo.
Yeah, and I get the notion of like, oh, he's always like pushing himself to succeed, which I can understand that. But the gray areas, like John said, I mean, you put gray areas in handballs, and now look at that, the refs don't even know what the hell a handball is. So it should definitely just be, it's easier just to say no betting whatsoever than it is to kind of pull the minutia out of all of it, because then somebody could say, hey, that's not right. The way that he did it, or he did it, it circumvented it in a roundabout way and ended up betting on something else. So I agree with absolutes, but it's I think the other thing is in Europe, it's so much different than the US, which just started sports gambling. Whereas like you can basically choose anything. Like, do you remember the FA Cup? I think it was FA Cup game. Arsenal had with that one nobody team where like the goalie bet that he'd go and eat a pie at halftime or whatever. It's like those are things that those are things you can bet on in England that you cannot bet on in America. It's only the lines, it's only like who scores, it's only who scores first. It's kind of like very streamlined. So maybe that might be the issue, is like eliminating the betting to being like, oh, I bet when Mo Salah scores, he takes his shirt off, and that I'm going to put $5 down on that. And like, that just seems like wild, right? It's like, or Jurgen Klopp sneezes between the 20th minute and the 35th minute. It's like, maybe they should eliminate that, and it should just be the baselines and the money lines.
I don't know if there was one, but I'm sure there was one on how many times they're going to cut to Taylor Swift, for example. I'm sure there was one.
I'm going to put $10 on Tim getting 5 Tim Michin specials right this season. What are the odds on that? What's the line on that?
And yes, Marcus says they can bet on anything over there. Hold on, Football Flashback, and I'm taking this seriously that he does say in second edition that he has seen a therapist. It didn't fix it at all. I don't know if we should maybe bring somebody who has gone through it in terms of like, because there was like a thing I watched about like Stephen Hawker talking about it. And like I say, there is no way to underestimate it, because it is like, it is ultimately a disease that you need to seek help to get rid of and stuff. But I still am not buying it, I think, mainly because you can bet on other things. Like, you can use that addiction on other things. But like I say, it goes back to what Gordo was saying, I think. But since we don't know as much about it, it's a lot easier probably for us to say it.
Yeah.
This time next week, we're bringing Michael Jordan on. Tune in. Tell your friends. We got Michael Jordan on next week. He's going to wear it.
Yeah, we're going to be like, hey, man, you're getting bumped. We got Michael Jordan coming on in the morning.
Just tell Jordan that I bet you won't come on the podcast. I bet you $100 you won't come on the podcast next week. He'll be on.
He's going to take that personally.
Have we ever had an active Liverpool player doing it? I'm betting, I assume. We got to specify these things. I'm sure they're all doing it. But,
and how active? What do you mean by active? Like currently playing while he's doing it?
Like have we like I guess I'm assuming like betting while they were playing for Liverpool. I figured Sparkus is Fowler and Owen. I mean, look, there could be several, right? There's no way to know until something like this happens. I guarantee you, if Newcastle knew that the if guy they're gonna, I don't know how that works if they get some of their money back or whatever.
Right.
Not the money they gave to Milan. Milan's gonna be like, that's on you, man. No refunds. But in terms of you got a player that you're not gonna be able to play. I mean, sounds like if Fagioli got 7 months and this is like a higher offense, it's going to be at least a year. Is I'm like going with it. Football Flashback said the trans corner taken quickly was a bit sketchy.
The only thing sketchy there was the Barcelona defense, man. How
Yeah,
can
they
you not
were
be
all
right?
in it.
Right.
Dude, even like in England, they would not be able to come up with that as a bet because that was
Right.
that was way out there. Or maybe it's so crazy that's why it works.
Yeah,
But
it is crazy though.
so I mean, you would think this is a more of a widespread issue, Gordo, and as much as it's being promoted, as much as like soccer plays both ways, like you're saying, right? You're getting the sponsors, you're getting the money from there, but then you're poo-pooing it at the same time. And let's face it, there's a lot of money in this. There's a lot, that's why Vegas is Vegas, right? And there's a lot of money in this. These companies make a lot of money, so they're able to sponsor and put a ton of money on different things. So this is only going to get worse from where I sit. Where are you at with it?
Yeah, I agree. It's only going to get worse because let's say, there's sponsorship deals, the way that the Premier League is worked out and now all the financial fair plays and stuff, there's very specific avenues for money that you get in. You can't use certain money to do certain things. It's got to be tied up and it's got to go in a certain direction. But let's just say, you get 20, I don't know what these deals are, but let's say you get 200 million from a sponsorship deal with Bet 365 or whatever for the front of your shirt. Although you can't use that 200 million to buy players, you now have 200 million that you were going to use, and now you can do something else with it. So technically, in a roundabout way, that money does pay for players. So some of these players are actually being purchased with betting money, so it's like it's really like a very gray area, and it reminds me a lot of like the college like football, where it's just like, oh yeah, we can't pay the players, but at one time there was a video game, and then they do the jersey sales, and sometimes the ticket sales are insane, and these schools are making money hand over
So much monies.
I need some Turkish coffee.
You need some reckless coffee. Let's go.
Probably need some reckless coffee. Reckless coffee doesn't make you reckless with gambling, people.
They're making money hand over fist on this stuff and going
right.
like, you can't do that. Only we can, because it's wrong when you do it, but it's totally okay when we do it. So it is. I don't know. I think it only gets worse because of that. That it doesn't make any sense.
Ryan says, I like monies. Yeah, we should probably not say reckless coffee doesn't make you reckless betting, especially John. You should not be endorsing that line. So you should lay low and let us throw that around over here.
I know how John feels because I put something down for the Women's World Cup and I had a 9-game parlay and it all went smoothly for me. But because it was over in Australia, I went to bed, right? And I woke up to the headlines. I forget who they were playing, but whatever the South Korea game was. And I went to bed and I woke up and all the headlines were like, South Korea in historic win shocks the world. And I was like, I literally went to bed going, oh, I got $800 in my pocket tomorrow. And then this goddamn South Korea pulls out an upset and I'm done. So I was like, yep, that's it. I'm not betting anymore.
I'm a fan of, because I do some parlays for like NFL and stuff like that. And
I hope you didn't bet on the Niners
like
this
there
weekend.
should be an award when you do a parlay and you get every single one wrong. I think there should be like a consolation prize being given for that. But like, you know what, dude? You were so good. You're so damn wrong. Here you go. At least your money back or something like that. So Football Flashback, we're going to have to bring him on the show. He's asking the tough questions this morning. Would we ever accept a betting sponsor? How will we feel about that morally? I don't know. That's a good question. John, if I come to you tomorrow and say, I don't know, the Monday Night Podcast has like a new sponsor, Bet365 is giving us this. because the dollar amount should not matter, right? Because that makes it
Should
even
it?
more.
I'm kidding.
Even though we like money.
I'm kidding.
John is like, but that's a lot of betting money.
Right.
Okay, so
How much we talking?
we can really turn it around, make it even more in a parlay. John, are you taking it? Are you not taking it? Well, I honestly don't know. So go ahead.
Well, let me just say that Jordan Henderson is one of the players that I idolized growing up. So, if we're going to be following his inspiration, generational wealth. Seriously, though.
Not for the money, though, right?
Not for the money. Absolutely. No, we're doing this for a righteous cause. We're trying to raise Liverpool awareness in America, people.
Sparky says he's taking it. I mean, yeah, we can take it and use it for the good,
Yeah.
Gordo, you in?
Yeah, look, I'm of the mindset of we're the authority, so we can do it. You can't, listeners. But since we're authority, we can. So yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll not only take it, then we'll use that money to bet on Liverpool and really just blow your brain out. It's like, take gambling to the extreme over here.
We've got mountains of coffee and gambling debt.
Staying up all night drinking reckless coffee and betting on different football games around the world. I mean, I think it's just like, it's a literally slippery slope, though, right? All joking aside, I mean, it's like I almost feel like as much money is involved in it, you're never going to get out of it. The temptation is always going to be there. And the problem is, these guys have money. So it's not a risk, and so it can easily start for fun, even though if it's small. I mean, that's like I don't consider myself an addict or anything. We bet just for shits and giggles to make some games a bit more meaningful when we kick back and watch like NFL on Sunday with like Angie and stuff. So there's not a lot of money involved. If you win, you win. If you don't, you don't, kind of a deal. But Sparky says if Bet365 takes over as Liverpool's main sponsor, do we protest? Hell no. I don't think we do, because it's not like if you take money from a betting company, are you ultimately in some ways endorsing it, Gordo?
Yeah, I think you have to, right? Because you wouldn't put something on your kit that you don't agree with, or it wouldn't make any sense to be like, yeah, we'll take the money from them, but we don't bet. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it would be us like saying like reckless coffee brought to you by, just avoid it like hell. Like it's not good for you.
Right. We get reckless coffee, but we're just known as the morning tea show or something.
Yeah, I guess that is a slippery slope. But yeah, that's a good one. That's a good moral ethics question that we should save for an ethics class. But yeah, I think if your club takes it, I mean, I know they're getting rid of the jerseys next year or something like that. You can't have it on the jerseys anymore. But I think stadiums have the names. And not to mention, Sky Sports has this show on, sponsored by, that show sponsored by, like it's all over TV. I mean, you watch any, like over here, any NFL on Sunday, every other commercial is a betting commercial sponsored by, spokespeople being like players, like, players who just retired, who, makes you think, were they betting last year before they retired as well? So, I mean, it's part of that in there. Because a giant corporate bank is so much better, says right. And that's the thing, obviously, if there's money, if they have so much money that they're like advertising and investing, I'm sure there was some shady stuff going on in the background to get it there. But yeah, I think, I don't, I guess, see it as huge of a negative, because I don't think it means because you're taking that, John, you're okay with players being involved in it.
Yeah. There's always nuance, nuance associated with things. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't care about gambling addiction. For one, if Liverpool are to get that sponsor, like, obviously gambling isn't illegal as long as it's the same as alcohol, right? We had Carlsberg as sponsors, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean like we're turning a blind eye to, driving under the influence or something. It's just, drink responsibly, gamble responsibly, and all that. So there's always nuance. Like, not everything has to be the extremes here. And at the end of the day, for these clubs, all that matters is how much the sponsor is going to be paying them for putting their logo on.
Goes back to the generational wealth thing. So, okay, It is decided. The morning is taken. Reckless Coffee is our morning coffee or tea show sponsor. But if you're interested and if you're a betting company out there, there's a couple of good shows in the evening you could be interested
And
in.
John will be a subscriber too.
Yes, and then you get a lot of business directly.
Oh boy, if you're
John
gonna
will
let
start-
me run a betting show, Tim, please don't, because like everyone's gonna be chasing after me, gonna be messaging you, hey, what's this John's dude's address? He lost me a lot of money.
just do whatever the opposite you say. People will make tons of money.
Right.
People really banking that. I mean, I know, like, I actually even thought about it, like when we were kind of coming up with the lineup, when we started, like, American Scouts for TV on YouTube and stuff, which you should subscribe to, by the way, if you have not. That was one of the things we talked about, and we were like, what are we gonna really say? Because there's so many shows out there for betting. I mean, I know in the late afternoon, every sports network has a ton of like betting shows.
Right.
Like football flashbacks. I see he's like probably was he getting like an employee discount? Is probably
Free parlays every week.
Okay, well, let's take some bets over here. Are we betting? Because the news is, I think like this was a tweet. Christian Falk is reliable when it comes to things he says overall. Musiala, I'm assuming we're one of the teams interested in John. You're the one who brought this to the table. What's your take on it? I blame you.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my fault, and it's kind of funny, everyone, because at the start of the show, I was like, "Yeah, I don't really buy into this, but we're kind of like low on news right now, so let's just talk about it." So just a disclaimer there. But
you didn't bet that we'll be talking about gambling, did you? Okay,
right,
go ahead.
Right. So Musiala is a wonderful talent. Like, honestly, my only worry is, and let me answer your question first before I get into what I feel about it. I think it's not going to happen. Honestly,
are you going to bet on it? Yeah,
I'm not going to bet on it for sure.
Okay.
Not going to bet on it, especially because
it's almost a guarantee that it's gonna happen.
Right. Like, it looks like Sparky. It looks like Sparky wants to bet on it too. So I guess we have to ask Tim what's the over under for this whole thing. So
yeah, I'm not even opening this one up because that's a sucker.
my question is, he seems like a player that is primed to be molded by a club type manager in terms of like elevating him from a good to great player like Klopp did with a Mane, with a Salah, and so on and so forth. But my question is, where does he play? Because I think he plays on the left wing for Bayern and as an attacking midfielder, and we don't really employ pure attacking midfielders for our team. So as much as I'd want him to be a Liverpool player, he'd have to, endure some sort of shifting in terms of position. So and again, disclaimer, I don't think it's happening, but those are just my thoughts in terms of like his fit and everything.
I personally don't see it happening. I mean, you can play him on the wing, but honestly, it's because unless there's an issue with Bayern, Gordo, like that was the deal with Gravenberg, right? I mean, it just did not work out. Both sides knew it didn't work out, so that's how we were able to get him. You don't really get a player from Bayern in Germany unless there's something severely wrong and Bayern does not want any part of it. But even if that's the case, why would Musiala want to come to Liverpool over other teams? Unless we're doing some other moves, like while Diaz is there and stuff like that. Again, like why would he? I guess he can replace Mo on the right side wing.
Oh,
hold on, I think we lost Gordo. He's a second behind. Gordo's Wi-Fi. My bet is Gordo's Wi-Fi has an issue.
How much are you willing to put on?
Roll the dice, guys. This can get wrong. That no why the football flashback is addictive. You back, Gordo? Nope, he's not. Okay, so while he catches up, we totally lost him now. We just like totally disconnected. So unless like, is that why you're saying it's not Ryan Taylor's Taylor's back saying like breakfast is ready, Gordo? So that's why you have to go. But so yeah, it's like, is that why you feel like it won't happen? Like, because I think we both looked at him, but like that ain't happening. But because it came from Christian, we were like, maybe. So what makes you say no way in hell?
I think we're stacked as well. Like he favors the left wing. Like we have
Yes.
Diaz and Jota playing there, unless we somehow convert him to a right wing and maybe act as Mo Salah's replacement. Which I don't know, man. Like this kid is young, but he already has his ways set in stone to an extent. Like he already has a playing style. He plays through midfield, and bringing up what Ryan commented here, he's heard about this the same about Sane. Although those rumors are less, less legitimate. I'd actually prefer maybe a Leroy Sane if we're going to be getting someone over, from Bayern, as maybe a stopgap Mo Salah or even a long-term Mo Salah replacement, because he's pretty much, he has his injury issues, but he's pretty much a world-class player on his day. Like, if I was going to name the two players in the club year that I hated facing the most, it's probably Hazard and Sane. And getting Sane in would be a good step if Mo was to leave. But as for Musiala, again, that's the reason why I'm kind of iffy on him, Tim, because I don't see where he's going to play.
And Sane does Gordo's back with us. Taylor's back, so Taylor will be happy. Sane almost seems a lot more likely in terms of a player profile that you would get out of Bayern Gordo as opposed to like a 20-year-old young talent.
Yeah, because Bayern don't invest in players they don't think has a future, right? So if they really value this kid, they're going to put the money in because they can. They have the money to do it. So if Bayern lets a player go that early, it just means that either there's something terribly wrong at the negotiating table, or they don't value him as a piece of their project moving forward. Now that would be a red flag, I think, to any team. Would be, well, why are Bayern? That would be the first question they'd ask is, why are Bayern letting him go? And
yes.
If it turns out that, they're just really far apart on the negotiating table, then that might just be, a pushy agent, which unfortunately with a lot of these young kids, we're seeing more and more with these agents just trying to get too large of a cut, pushing these kids in the wrong direction. I mean, you look at like Lavia and what I know he's injured right now, but I don't think he's going to get a sniff at that Chelsea team, even with the situation they're in right now. And that was just purely his agent pushing him in a bad direction. So the other thing too, when I saw this, and I think it was mentioned in a group chat, was just it probably is a move from the agent, right? Just to sneak something in there to be like, oh, we're looking elsewhere. We don't really want to sign. So you kind of got to be a little cautious with stuff that comes out this early.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I see a lot of stuff, the January stuff already said. I saw it so much, and especially like the international break is. When you see the stuff coming out in the international break, it's because they're hurting for news. So they're kind of like digging through the old files from the summer. They're like, what is a transfer rumor we can get back to? That guy never signed. And then they just let's just heat that back up, throw it in the microwave and publish it is basically what happens, I think. But lastly, let's get to this over here. Now the City game is in the crack of dawn as well, especially for us. It's the early game, obviously, over there. This one says for police intervention because of like what happens between the fans in the past. Is it just me that the more we make an issue of this morning thing, the more we get these games, John? Like, we should just shut up, suck it up. We're talking about a 2-hour difference. I don't understand why this is such a, like, I understand these guys are coming here international, but I mean, I don't see a huge difference being playing at, 2 hours before. The guy's not going to get rejuvenated in 2 hours, even if he drinks reckless coffee.
Right. And he better drink reckless coffee because it's going to help. It's not going to completely solve it, but it's going to help. So, but yeah, I'm with you on that camp, actually. I'm kind of sick and tired of Klopp and the players mentioning, it's the early kickoff. Like, deal with it, boys. You're being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, while we regular folk wake up at like the crack of dawn and commute to work but I digress. That's a conversation for like another podcast, as Gordo said. So for that one, we couldn't do anything, can we? Because it's we kind of put it on ourselves with like the whole issues with the fans clashing and causing all these sorts of things. So for once, I don't think, bold prediction, and I don't know how much money I'm going to bet on this, right? I don't think Klopp is going to bitch about this particular one, because I think the reason is actually justified.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll probably bitch about it, I would think, Gordo, but I think it's almost like we should stop bitching about it because it's 2-3 hours. I don't understand. Sparky says fuck, it's 4:30 in Phoenix. So now we know when Sparky is going to be back in the US. So if you were a squatter in Sparky's house, you know when you have to get your ass out of there. But Gordo, how big of a deal is it to you, or is this club just, are we just making too much of a stink out of it?
I think, I've been waiting for a Tompkins piece on the stats from the Big Six on a 6:30 kickoff, right, or a 12:30 their time kickoff, because that's what I'm really waiting for. Because if it is significant, if the data is significant, then there is a definite red flag to throw and challenge it. Because
the numbers, there's a huge difference. The number of Liverpool games.
Yeah. It is.
It's massive, especially after international break, which that is arguably the hardest 12:30 game to play, because sometimes you don't have players coming back until late on Thursday. So you've got one day, and sometimes you give those players a rest with the challenges of travel. So that is a tough game. The weird thing is that you play two fixtures that now it was always Everton that we played early, just because they want everyone out of the streets and everything, just because it's a local derby. But now you've got City, which appears that the authorities have deemed this another game that has to be played early. It's just weird that you have Everton and City after international breaks, because there is, you can schedule those things around and move them around so that they're not international breaks. I think it really is just a stick by somebody, right? It's just like they keep talking about this shit, so let's just keep giving it to them. So I don't know, and that might just be that Liverpool, always the victims mentality of thinking that it's us against the world, and in many ways it feels like it is, and it's one of those things where well, if the evidence never goes the other way, then I think that we're justified in saying that it feels like everyone's against us. So yeah, I'm still waiting for that Tompkins piece to come out with the stats on it, because if there's a significant data that shows that when the top 6 teams play at 6:30, they're worse than they are at any other time, then I think we've got something.
I think the more it's a bigger deal. I think, the more we mention, I think the more we're getting, because the numbers are way off. We're 3 times, 4 times more than everybody else in terms of getting it. But I think it does go back to that. You bitch about it, you're going to keep getting it. So it's kind of like, when you discipline your kid as well. It's like, you don't like it, well, we're going to keep making it. But
doesn't that, sorry.
I mean, I think against Everton, we know why, like you said, the same thing again, I guess, security reasons. But in some ways, against a team like Wolves or whatever, to me, it's a bigger deal. It's a bigger disadvantage if you're going to count it as a disadvantage, because you have obviously a lot more international players. But I feel like when you're playing City, they have just as many international players that are traveling and stuff like that too. So I feel like that kind of evens itself out, as opposed to when you play, I don't know, like Bournemouth or somebody like that, who might only be sending 8, 9 guys to national duty, compared to you sending I think we sent 16 or something like that this time. So I think that's where it kind of gets to me. But before we go, Gordo, we're not going to see you. John will be with us on Friday, but let's get an early prediction. And how tense is this? Is in the Gordo household? Does Papa Gordo get Kazi, where the nerves start? Have the nerves started already, or is it a lot more friendly, cozy watching?
Well, we don't really talk to that side of the family for many reasons other than who they support. But there is some, my dad knows that there's an email exchange the day after, right? So he's probably got 2 emails panned out already, of one of laughing in your face, and the other one was something terribly went wrong, and he's going to come up with 600 excuses as to why it happens. But in recent years, I can imagine him only penning one of the emails, and it's usually in our favor. So it's not it used to be a very big deal. I remember time stopped at the house as soon as Setanta came around, because we really couldn't get games until Setanta was available on and that was 2006, 7. So it's only been maybe from 2006 to 2012 or so was it a really tense situation at the house. But it's gotten a little easier. And also my dad's retired, so there's not many stresses in his life anymore besides Liverpool. He knows. So our first title push against City, he still says that is what gave him his heart issues. He still blames that season on him having having a quadruple bypass. So I like it. It's definitely still a hot button issue.
Yeah, I would think so. Ryan has already got the prediction, the Timuchin special, with Liverpool 3 and Taylor 1. But hey, Sparks has no nerves. Blue Side of Family know they're going to lose, and the Timuchin special again, man. It's really catching up. It's really catching up.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'm hoping for a win. I'm always nervous on these games because you never know. I mean, you kind of get the best of Everton, whatever the hell that might be.
Yeah.
I guess my concern more is like I don't know what we're gonna get out of us in terms of who we're gonna get out of us. I think I'm pretty sure the games ended, or are there more games today? There are no games today, so the games ended as opposed to normally having games on Wednesdays and they're getting back in the last minute and stuff like that. So everybody should be back. Everybody should be ready to go. I don't think like I'm concerned as much about Costas in a game like this, for example. Let's hope I'm proven right, but it should be interesting. Friday, obviously, we'll be chatting a lot more about it, and tomorrow night, I'm sure the boys will talk a lot about it, followed by the Fantasy Nerd. So tune in for that. No Premier League panel show tonight, obviously with the international break. Not as much. We had that episode last week, but that show will be back Wednesday, and we have a couple of newcomers, Newcastle being one of them. It'd be interesting to hear his take on like the Tonali ordeal, for example, because he was a huge addition to that team and made a big difference. To lose him for something like this, I think is worse. I think I'd rather lose somebody to injury than to something like this, but we'll definitely get his take. But as always, thanks to those watching, following us. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and all that good stuff. And go check out our sponsor, Reckless Coffee. Get yourself some good cup of Joe so you can curl up with us Friday morning and as we talk more about the Derby game. Have an awesome Wednesday, everyone. Take care.
Take care, guys.